always carried on the same subjects rather than necessarily revising them for a different generation. Obviously, to gain more knowledge, you acquire knowledge in those subjects. To pass exams, that's pretty much straightforward. Almost everyone takes exams. To become better citizens, and highly educated workers help the economy. So, I mean, some of these reasons might be better than others, but I don't really see necessarily why we pick those subjects. Now, of course, if Camp Quest were a school, we probably wouldn't be able to do what we do, because there's obviously so much pressure from parents. They don't want their children to be left behind. They want their children to get the grades so they can go on to university and get good results. So actually, we have a real freedom in an educational way. We are free to take risks. We're free to teach people in a different way. And I think this could lead to a more well-rounded and enriched mind. And I think, for me personally, that the problem with the educational system is that it's fact-centric, and we try and drum into the children that memorization is learning. I mean, when I was at school, for example, in biology we learn all the different bits of a plant. Great, you go away, you learn it. 15 years later, or however old I was at the time, I could tell you that there's petals and leaves, but I can't remember those intricacies. But what would be really great is to know how it works. We were told to memorize vocabulary in French or German in the languages, and I got an A at German A level, and I went to Germany and I couldn't speak a word of it. It took me 6 months of living in Germany to actually be able to feel confident, and I'd done German for 8 years or so at school. And it's really amazing that I can jump through all the hoops and get the grades, but really there's not a lot of actual understanding that goes into that. Obviously memorising times tables, maybe that's useful, but perhaps understanding a little bit more theory in mathematics would be good. Learning poems off by heart. In English we learnt so many poems off by heart, and now I know none of them because it's not a part of my daily life. And my personal favourite exercise that we had to do at school was learn the valencies, numbers of the elements. And I do not know what a valency is today. I'm sure I learnt it at the time. But I can still remember the song that I used to help me remember it to pass the test. So, I mean, I think this is kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that we're so concerned with remembering facts and trying to pass tests that years later there's actually nothing that's been gained in the experience. Now, I'm not saying that there is no place for this kind of learning, or any place in the educational system. But it does strike me as a tad on the pointless side. And I mean, some people have said, well, it's not what you learn, it's the fact that you learn how to learn. So you learn to memorise and keep your brain active. But the thing is, I mean, it's not necessarily a nice situation to be in, I don't know. But if I want to know a fact about something, I go and look it up on the internet. And it takes 5 seconds, and I can look at various different sources, and I can decide whether it's a legitimate source. And information is so widely available to school children. All the schools are kitted out on computers and the internet. So they can all go and look it up, on Wikipedia or whatever. And it really seems like memorization for memorization's sake. So what is the alternative? I know I'm digging in a bit to the educational system. But I mean, what if we started from scratch, building an educational system, or a curriculum or something? And that's actually a picture from Camp Quest in 2009, where there were 24 kids, and we just sat around in December having a discussion. Brilliant. So
in this country?
This was in the UK, in Somerset. So the first suggestion I would make is teaching a little bit more in context. To give one example, certainly in primary schools, history, the way history is taught, it's very much taught as true stories about what actually happened. And one term would study the Romans, and then the Vikings and the Tudors, and it would be very distinct and separate categories. But if you'd asked me as an 8-year-old, having just learned about the Romans, what was happening during the world in Roman times, I how they built a house or what clothes they wore or something like that. And obviously these facts, I don't remember them all. I don't know what Romans wore anymore apart from what I've seen in the movies. But my knowledge about the Roman period has been drawn from the context I received from other sources. So it's been actually nothing to do with what I learned in school, but everything about coming in from different ways. Secondly, which I just mentioned earlier, and I've put in capitals because it really is my personal pet peeve that I don't teach this. We should be teaching the scientific method from an early age. Like, I don't see any reason why 5-year-olds can understand it if taught in a simple way. And I really think that teaching children what science is, rather than science as being sort of unchanging facts, would give a much better understanding of the process and how to assimilate new facts within the framework of the subject or the science. And thirdly, one of my suggestions, critical thinking and philosophy. I really think that this should feature from an early age as well, especially in this age of easy access information, where I know all the children, they go to Wikipedia when they're asked to write an essay. I did it in my master's degree. I'm not proud of it, but you know. But the problem is that if you're in a fact-centric educational system, you go to Wikipedia to look it up. You see the facts, and it could well be wrong. And if they're taught critical thinking or philosophical skills, they can go to Wikipedia and they can say, well, this could be right, it could be wrong, and here are the reasons why. I'm going to look at another source and compare it. And so there's more of a process, an intellectual process going on. And the more we steer away from facts and focus on the process, I think the better understanding that we'll get of the facts. And another point about this is, obviously science is constantly changing when we encounter new evidence. And so focusing on facts, really makes you think as a child, this is the absolute. And especially, well, I'm not going to talk about religious education because I know that varies so much from school to school, but in certain subjects, you can't just teach something as a fact. You have to sort of teach, well, this is a fact because, and this is the best that we know at the time, especially in the sciences. And I mean, I went to one of the best schools in the country and was diligently taught to memorize facts and pass exams, and yet sometimes I really feel that my education only began when I went to university and did my master's and later on. So how Camp Quest fits in, I understand this is a bit of a pipe dream. The educational system is not going to change, and may never happen in mainstream education. I know there's obviously Rudolf Steiner schools and other progressive schools like, is it Summerhouse? Something like that, yeah. But the great thing about Camp Quest is that we can give the children a break from traditional learning, and the parents can still be satisfied about the exams and stuff like that. And I think the most important thing is that they can realise that learning is not something to do to pass exams. Learning is something that can really enrich their minds, and it doesn't end when you leave school. So I'm often asked what we do at camp, and those of you who are with it might be interested in this. So these are just a few of the sessions that we run and illustrating sort of how our ideology fits in practice. Philosophy for Children is a teaching method that has been implemented in some schools. I think Northamptonshire and a couple of other counties do the sessions. We have a couple of sessions in the week devoted to this. It centres around stimulus and subsequent philosophical discussions of that stimulus. So, for example, last year we had two groups, one a sort of less experienced and one older, more mature group. And the younger group did Jack and the Beanstalk. And what happens then is that they get into small groups and they are told the different types of questions, the most important being the philosophical question. And they have to come up with a list of philosophical questions that arise from the stimulus. This is a Guernica by Picasso, and this was the one we used for the older group. And I mean, some of the questions they come up with, the age range is 9, well, this year we had 9 to 16, but most of them are sort of 10 to 13 kind of age. And the questions they came up for Jack and the Beanstalk was, should the rich give to the poor? For Guernica, can war be beautiful? And I think the one they decided to do for Guernica, which was a very heavy question, was something like, the wounds may fade, but does violence go on forever? And I mean, this is a 12-year-old girl who puts up her hand and says this. So you can really, I think this is great because you really start to see what they're actually thinking. And they want to think like this, they want to discuss it, but I just don't think they get the opportunity to. So that all the questions are thrown up, and then the children vote in a democratic way about which question they want to discuss, and then another session we have a discussion, where each child is given the opportunity to speak if they want to, and we have either a stuffed toy or an object that they have to have the object if they want to talk. So there's very strict rules about conduct, which is kind of strange because we try and be so progressive, but I think it's important to have that discipline in there because children will interrupt each other. Well, adults will interrupt each other too. So it's good to have a framework to work around. And I think children are often a little taken aback by this method because obviously in state schools class sizes can be up to 30, I think, or maybe even more. And when you're in a class full of 30 people, it's very easy to blend in and just not say anything. So for this exercise, I think we had about 15 and all sitting in a circle. And so you really get a chance to say something if you want to. Another factor that I think is quite inspiring for the children are the different themes that we have. The first year we had evolution as a theme, and mind was last year, and this year we're doing what is science. And they're broad enough to be able to incorporate it into every session a little bit, so we'll have a session, for example, this year we want to go a little bit to the history of science and sort of how science came up through history, and then maybe talk a little bit about Popper and what constitutes science and a scientific argument. And then in another session we'll get them to construct their own scientific inquiry, and maybe, but obviously we haven't planned that program this year, so I don't want to spoil what happens. But you see what I mean, we'll take the theme and we'll approach it from very different angles. So in school, maybe that would be covered in history or in physics or something, but we want to have an overriding theme and not let the children know that they're discussing different subjects, which is devious of us, but it works, and they don't realise, I don't think they realise how much they learn. But we hope to get a general sense of understanding rather than them going out saying, well, I learned this and this and this. For the scientific method at least, I hope they at least get a general awareness and understanding of it, even if they can't necessarily define it, but I'd like to think that they'll be able to apply that to their schoolwork. And the other thing that worked quite well when we tried it in 2010 was the end-of-day group discussions. And these started out, actually, they weren't planned, they started out as a way to calm them down before bed. Because teenagers, well, can be a little bit rowdy, so we wanted something that was quite quiet and reflective. And we actually sat the whole group of 40 children in a big circle, and we were outside, the light was fading, and we just had a quiet discussion about what we'd learned. And it was just kind of a review session, but it was also the chance for them to ask any question they wanted, whether it was related to the day or not, and just have a really chilled out chat. And I think that worked quite well. And just going back on the kind of discipline thing, even though we try and be quite strict, because sometimes you have to be, one parent actually put on an internet forum that our approach to discipline was an intellectual existential approach, which apparently the boy liked. So yeah, I guess that's a good thing. We've had some really good feedback from parents, so I guess it's onwards and upwards. So finally, I'm certainly not claiming to have all the answers to the ideal education. And I know there's probably people here with years of teaching experience who are just shouting, no, you're all wrong. But, I mean, I'm not sure that it's necessary to implement everything I've suggested. But I know that Camp Quest works, and it really affects the children positively. And I know that some of the methods we use do encourage them to speak and to think more freely than they do in the classroom. This is feedback from parents that we've had saying, you know, maybe they're not performing very well on one subject, and after they come to Camp Quest, suddenly it's a spike because there's more of an understanding that actually sounds like arrogance.